Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we are doing the mid-year freakout tag. This is my first time doing this tag, so I'm very excited about it. I will leave all the questions in the description box below in case you want to tag along as well. But for now, let's just get straight into the questions. Number 1, the best book that you've read so far this year. I have 2 this year so far, books that I'm obsessed with. The first is Friends in Dark Shapes by Katey Bedford. This is an Australian title, although it is getting a North American release, I think. Or it either has just been released or it's getting one soon. It's got a completely different cover. It's told in a series of vignettes over the year after the main character's father has passed away. It is quintessentially millennial in my view, and it's very rooted in place in Sydney. So there's a lot of interesting discussions about sort of like coming of age, although I think for a lot of millennials that sort of happened in our late 20s instead of our late teens. And that's very much reflected in this book. The main character's sort of just like finding her way in the world, living in a share house, but also sort of like having these existential questions about turning 30 soon. There's also a lot of discussion about gentrification in Sydney, especially because this is set in Redfern. So it's an exploration of self and identity and belonging and community, but the sort of like undertone or the thing that, you know, underpins the entire thing is grief and loss. I feel like we have so many books that are about mothers and daughters or fathers and sons, but there's not so many that really explore the complexities and intricacies of a father and daughter relationship. And this book just does that so beautifully. And the fact that this is a debut novel, like it doesn't feel like that at all. It's so well done and so well crafted. It's just brilliant. And then the book that's probably like won my heart over the most this year is There's No Such Thing as an Easy Job, but this is by Tsumura and it was translated by Polly Barton. I love this book. In it we follow an unnamed character. She's sort of like in her mid-30s and she had a career of some description, but for whatever reason she burned out. And we sort of meet her when she's trying to return to work, but she very specifically wants to do only easy jobs. So she goes to this job agency and is very clear about the fact that she doesn't want any hard work, she doesn't want any responsibilities, anything like that. So throughout the book, she sort of has 4 different jobs, I think. And we just follow her trying to like navigate each of those jobs. And I found this very interesting for a lot of reasons. I think one was that I have read quite a lot of novels from Japan that do sort of comment on or critique the sort of like the modern world and like the expectations and pressures that are put on people. And that is both like societal pressures and like working pressures. And usually they're either more absurd or they're more critical. This one is sort of just more matter of fact and it feels like it's not trying to make a commentary in the same way some of those other books that I've read are. This just feels like a personal journey with this character. And so in that way, we still get the realities of today and the challenges of being alive today. For me, at least, I found this a lot more hopeful and life affirming. I think too, the fact that like I've been through not the same journey as this character. I didn't, I wasn't mid-career and burnt out. I was sort of like at the beginnings, like I was at law school doing really well and then I had my mental health crisis. And so my idea of who I was going to be and the idea of the career that I thought I was going to have completely did a 180. It had elements of the absurd and the unexplainable, but ultimately it was really quite a mundane story about a woman just sort of trying to do her best without doing too much, but still, despite herself, wanting to find meaning in what she was doing. And even if she thought she didn't want to, still wanting to feel like she was contributing and she was valuable to the teams that she was a part of and whatever. I don't know. I loved this. I loved it, loved it, loved it. So this is a book that I haven't stopped thinking about, haven't stopped recommending, and haven't stopped raving about. I adore it. Question number 2, the best sequel that you've read so far in 2021. I don't tend to get involved in a lot of series. So I've only read a handful of sequels or subsequent books in series this year. And I can't pick between 2. I think the one that I enjoyed the most was Act Your Age, Eve Brown by Talia Hibbert. That was just a good time. Absolutely delightful. But I think the book that has made me most excited about what will come next in the series that I've read so far this year was Starsight by Brendan Sanderson. I read Starwood last year. It came to me in the Wild Book Box, and Starsight I finally got around to earlier in the year. And although I'm still not like obsessed with this series, I feel like Starsight took us in a completely different direction to what I was expecting. And it made this world so much bigger and more complex than I was expecting too. And I'm very excited for book number 3 now. Question number 3, new release book that you haven't read yet but want to. And I have an awful lot of these. I'll just talk about some of the ones that I own already that I do want to get to, and fairly soon. Clara and the Sun, Detransition Baby, Lonely Castle in the Mirror, Rebel Witch, Whereabouts, and Piranesi. Question number 4, most anticipated release for the second half of the year. I'm honestly not someone who keeps up very well with like upcoming releases. I sort of like vaguely will know if a favorite author of mine is coming out with a book. Like very often, every other year, I feel like Margaret Atwood graces me with a birthday present with a new release in September, which is great. Or if a book is coming out in a series I'm interested in, then maybe I'll know. But other than that, I'm not someone who sort of like plans out ahead what I'm looking forward to. But I do know 2 authors that I'm interested in are releasing a book this year. I think Akwaeke Emezi is coming out with a memoir, which is very exciting. And then Sally Rooney's new book. I only know that because Jack Edwards revealed the cover on his channel, and I love his channel. So those are the only ones that I'm like aware of, but I'm sure there's others. Number 5, your biggest disappointment so far this year. I feel like this year I've actually had quite a few books that I was really looking forward to, had quite high hopes for, were recommended to me personally, that I found very disappointing. One of those would be Sorrow and Bliss, I spoke about in my reading wrap up in May. Complete bust for me. Same with The Octopus and I. Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine is another book that I really thought I would like. I was directly recommended this because I liked The Convenience Store Woman, and to me this was nothing like that book. And it was one of those books that I feel like the neurodivergence of a character, the trauma of a character and trauma response was the humor. And I hate books that do that. I'm sorry, I do. The Rosie Project definitely falls into that category for me too, although it was even more egregious in its offenses in my opinion. I didn't even finish that damn book. And I can't quite believe that it's so popular. I can't get over it. And the book that I've actually finished and still given the lowest rating all year is Now That I See You by Emma Batchelor. I think this is offensive, and I don't understand why it's been published, and I really don't understand why people are hyping it and like lauding it. It makes me mad. I think it's one of those books that sort of like will acknowledge an issue or a problem without actually sort of like working through the problem. And there was actually, someone sent me a really great article about it. I'll see if I can find it again and link it below just in case you're interested. But it's like she will often comment on like the transphobia that she is displaying. She'll be like, oh, maybe that's transphobic, or oh, maybe I shouldn't get to determine how someone, presents their own femininity. Like she'll comment on it as a way of sort of like deflecting from the fact that she just did the thing, but then not actually sort of like dealing with the fact that like obviously she has some transphobia and some internalized misogyny that she hasn't worked through herself. I don't think this book stands on its own 2 feet at all. Like I think the only reason it was published and the only reason it won an award is because it talks about a topic that people are sort of interested in from like a voyeuristic point of view. And this book allows them that distance from it while still sort of entertaining the subject slightly. And I think that's messed up. Anyway, I've ranted about that book enough. What's the next question? Number 6, your biggest surprise so far this year. I have 3 books that I wanted to mention, 2 of which I sort of just picked up completely on a whim. And that's why they were such big surprises. I had no expectations whatsoever and I ended up loving them both. The first is A Room Called Earth by Madeline Ryan. And I mean, clearly you can see why I picked this up. This cover is incredible. This book I just completely devoured. The narrator in this as well as the author are neurodiverse. And in this book we follow the main character just over the course of one evening and then the following morning. Basically her going to a party, getting ready and then going to a party. And although I didn't always find her very likable, this character, she's very judgmental. It's also just a really interesting read and I think quite a touching and moving one by the end. I just thought it was really beautiful and just really interesting. Really well done, really fun. I do think that her self-perception of being like highly attuned and really like aware of what other people are doing it just ultimately reads a lot of the time as completely being judgmental. And honestly, a little like internalized misogyny comes through sometimes too. But I just also love her confidence, her self-awareness. And I think this wins greatest cover of all time. It's great. Then the other one was Lightfall, The Girl in the Cauldron by Tim Probert. This I picked up when I was in Bateman's Bay, just at Kmart. It was just at Kmart. It was really cheap. And I just felt like some sort of like light palette cleansing after I think it was after Eleanor Oliphant, to be honest. I needed a palette cleanse after that shit. And I didn't bring any sort of really light novels or graphic novels with me. So when I saw this at Kmart, and the art is just so beautiful. And it's sort of like this adventure story, but also tackles a lot with identity and anxiety. And the way that anxiety is depicted like actually drawn and represented in this is just so beautiful and brilliant, I think. So this was just a really sweet adventure sort of story that I'm very much looking forward to the follow-up on. And then the last book that surprised me just in how much I cried, I can't get over how much I cried, is Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Kawaguchi. I have not cried this much over a book ever, or in a very long time. I'm still just kind of in shock at the response that this got out of me. I knew it was the sort of book that would like want to make me cry, and I am a crier, so I was expecting to tear up, but I was not expecting to wail on the couch for 45 minutes. Question number 7, your favorite new author. There's quite a few authors that I've really enjoyed this year that I would like to read more from. Banana Yoshimoto is one. Tsumura, the author of No Such Thing as an Easy Job, is definitely another, although I don't think anything else from her has been translated to English, which is very frustrating. I definitely want to read more from Kavita Bedford. Like Friends in Dark Shapes was just so well done that I just can't wait for whatever she brings out next. And then I suppose 2 authors that have made quite an impact on me who I already know that I will be reading more from. Definitely Raja Shahade. Palestinian Walks is just incredible, and I already have another one of his books on my shelf, so I'm looking forward to that. And then Anita Heiss, the author of Billy Yaradungalungdarai. She is quite a well-known author in Australia, and I know she's written several other books. I've just never read them, so definitely want to get onto that too. Question number 8, your newest fictional crush. I don't know that I really am the sort of reader that reads a lot of books that like are conducive to like crushing on anyone, but I'm still always and forever in love with all 3 of the Brown sisters. Number 9, your newest favorite character. I have a few for this one. I think Beta and Baha, the sisters in The Engagement of the Enlightened Tree. Oh my god. I think Beta and Baha, the sisters in The Enlightenment of the Green Gage Tree, I think definitely were 2 very well fleshed out characters, and having them as sisters and just how different they were. And I loved how they sort of represented 2 very different sort of experiences of the Islamic Revolution in Iran. Both of their journeys in the plot were really quite unexpected and surprising, and also beautiful and transformative in their own ways too. So yeah, those 2 characters are definitely 2 that are staying with me. The unnamed main character in There's No Such Thing as an Easy Job, partly just because I identify with her, partly also because she's just really funny and likable, I think. But I think the character that I've fallen in love with the most this year would be Wogadine from Billy Yaradungalungdarai by Anita Heiss. She's a young Aboriginal woman who is a servant to a white family in Gundagai, and then they move to Wagga. And this story really just follows her journey. And she's so sweet and kind and generous, but also just very strong-willed, knows herself very well. She's very respectful. She's very resilient. She's just everything that you want in a main character, really. I don't know. I think Anita Heiss succeeded in so many ways with this book, but none more so than her character, Wogadine. She's just delightful to read, but still so real. And just, I don't know, she is absolutely the heart of this book, and I loved her. Number 10, the book that made you cry. Obviously, Before the Coffee Gets Cold is absolutely number 1 for the book that made me cry by far the most. I'm almost embarrassed by how much I cried, but I'm not, because it's kind of funny. Number 11, the book that made you happy. And I love this question because I don't read a lot of like overtly happy books. I'm aware of that. But the Eve Brown sisters, that whole trilogy, definitely. I was an idiot with a big grin on my face the whole way through every one of those books. And then of course, There's No Such Thing as an Easy Job. This I just found so uplifting and affirming for me personally. So I cried at the end, but in a way that I just was so like life affirming. I know that that's a strong term, but that's how I found it personally. So it just made me so happy, like so happy and hopeful, and just, yeah. Can you tell I'm obsessed with this book? I love it. Number 12, the most beautiful book. And I'm assuming this means like the physical book, like the cover. That's how I'm interpreting it anyway. So let's have a look at a few of my books. I think Billy Yaradungalungdarai is a really stunning cover. Just this color palette and like the imagery of the river, but then also like the embossed goanna up here. I think it's simple, but I do think it's really stunning. We've already spoken about it briefly, but A Room Called Earth, I think that this cover is brilliant. I just love it. And like all the details around the side, but then also just, I mean, I picked up this book because of the cover. I'd never heard of it before, wasn't even interested in it at all. The blurb sort of like intrigued me, but it was the cover that did it for me. So That's saying something. Well done to whoever did this. Then a couple of other books that I haven't read yet that I think are really beautiful, they're quite new to me, is Salt House. I don't know, there's something about like the colors and stuff in this that are really pretty. And Against the Loveless World. I love this. Like, it's textured as well and just really pretty colors. However, I think the most beautiful book that I own, that I bought this year, would have to be my version of Clara and the Sun. I got the Dimmicks like edition, which has like these really cool colored edges and also has a ribbon. And like the inside, like there's just a lot to like about this edition in particular. And yeah, I love like how our sun sort of like peeks through on the sides of the pages. I think it's really cool. And then the hardcover itself, if you take the dust jacket off, is yellow, which is my favorite color. And then books to read by the end of 2021. I have so many and I've bought more recently. There's a stack of like 15 books sitting in front of me that I still haven't even put on my fucking shelves. Oh my gosh. So let me just run through real quick a bunch of the books that come to mind that I have on my shelves at the moment. That like I want to read sometime soon. The Song of the Crocodile by Nadi Simpson. The Performance by Claire Thomas. Too Much Lip by Melissa Lukashenko. Rebel Witch by Kellyanne Maddox. Cherry Beach by Laura McPhee Brown. The Hate Race by Maxine Beniba Clark. The Rumi Prescription by Melody Moeasy. More of the Murderbot Diaries series by Martha Wells. And Wana Maraganya by Sally Morgan. Like I said, I have plenty more on my shelves to get to, but those are just a few that are sort of like in my mind that I know I want to get to soon. Whether I actually do or not is another question entirely. But that is it for the mid-year freakout tag. Thank you so much for watching today. I would love to hear in the comments below your answer to any of these questions, or if you've read any of these books, what you think of them. Or if you've already done a video response to this tag, be sure to link it below so I can come and hear your answers and say hi. Thank you too to all of my patrons for all of your support, and I will talk to you again in the next video. So much love. Bye.